Hi, everybody. Welcome to our case study of Grace and Callum. And before we dive into that, if I have not yet met you, welcome. I'm Dr. Rebecca Troy, owner and founder of Retrain the Dyslexic Brain. And so one of the reasons that we have made the concerted effort to showcase a lot of our clients is to inspire you. So I'm sure that you are not alone in feeling like you get a lot of negative messaging that it is not possible to grow and change as a child with dyslexia, and that is just absolutely not true. So today what we're going to do is showcase one of our clients who actually took two of her children through the program. So Grace and Callum are brother and sister, and so they went through our program in about 6.5 months, and their data was absolutely incredible. So Grace leapt from the 5th percentile to the 82nd percentile in reading, and Callum leapt from the 14th percentile to the 77th percentile, thanks to our Retrain the Dyslexic Brain program. So one of the things that I hope is going to come out for you today is that this really is a system. Mama Tara did not have any kind of background in education or neuroscience. She does work in healthcare, but she's a single mom that decided to help her two struggling children. And so she invested in this program that she was able to do right from the comfort of their home. And she got absolutely incredible results. And so we want to just kind of share with you what that process looks like and a little bit more about their personal experience. And I hope that that inspires you to know that absolutely change is possible in a short amount of time. So if you haven't heard of us or our program yet, we are a program that will help you to turn your child's dyslexia into a superpower, to get towering self-confidence in your child, help them get extraordinary grades in school so they can grow into a happy, healthy, well-rounded, successful child without spending thousands of dollars on tutoring or therapy, even if you were terrified of their reading, even if you are terrified of their reading level right now, not a big deal. We can absolutely help you to change that. So before we dive into Tara's case, I want to help you to understand a little bit more about dyslexia and the dyslexic brain specifically. So if you take a look at this image here, you will notice that this is the back of the brain. The hotter the color, the more activity that there is. So this is an fMRI. And you'll notice that in the person without dyslexia, during a language task, there's a lot of activity here in the parietal temporal lobes of the brain, in this auditory component. And there's also a lot of activity back here in the occipital lobe where vision is controlled. And so this relationship between what I see and what I hear is activated in a typical person when they're doing language tasks. But if you take a look at the brain of a person with dyslexia, you're going to notice something that's very, very different. First, you'll notice that there's not any activity here in this occipital lobe. So the vision component isn't lighting up. When you look at the parietal temporal lobe and how the brain is activated for sound, it is also significantly less in how much is lighting up. And so it's important to understand that with dyslexia, no amount of trying harder or reading more is going to cause this to change or be different. We quite literally need to help reorganize the way that the brain is hearing and responding to language in order to help it to function typically. And I think a lot of people kind of misunderstand that concept. And I think it's very important for you as a parent of a child struggling with dyslexia to just really understand that their brain is quite literally different. And so if we were to look at these two brains, eyes at rest, we wouldn't notice anything different about them. It's only during language tasks that we notice this profile looking significantly different. So I want to show you another image here that I hope will kind of articulate the same concept. So again, this is an EEG of a typical reader. Again, the hotter the color, the more activity. You'll see again activity here in the parietal temporal lobes and back here in the occipital lobe. But again, here's another way to look at the same profile. There's not activity here in occipital lobe and far less in parietal temporal. But after remediation, after supporting the brain to hear and respond differently to language, you can absolutely change the neurological profile of a person with dyslexia. And that's just so powerful to realize that that's possible, because the literature will often tell you otherwise. Like, there is just nothing that you can do to support a child with dyslexia, but without activity in these two areas of the brain, misfiring will happen. What does that look like? Well, you might be reading along and decode a word, and you get to that same word 2 lines later, and it's like you've never seen it before. Or you might add letters in while you're spelling, or you might omit letters while you're spelling. And so those things happen when there is this disconnect in the brain between what I see and what I hear. It might mean that the letters are reversed. It might mean that they're backwards. It could have any number of those misfires because of the way that the brain is processing language. But it's just super powerful to know that those things can change. So I think what's really great is when you translate that into real people and real stories. So Tara is a mother of 2 and 2 children with dyslexia. And I'm sure that as you're learning more about this, you also have learned that dyslexia is highly heritable, anywhere between 50 and 84% heritable in families. So it's highly likely that if one person in your family has dyslexia, there's going to be at least another person that also has it. So for Tara, both of her children struggled with dyslexia, and she said, oh gosh, it was such a challenge. So for her, her tipping point was at a parent-teacher conference. Her teacher said, Grace is trying her best. It's not that she doesn't try, but she still needs something more. She's not meeting grade level, and she had already had that conversation about her son that same day. She'd been told by multiple teachers and reading specialists for the last several years. He was in 4th grade, and since 1st grade, they had been doing private tutoring. And so she had gotten to this point where it was like, okay, yeah, we absolutely have to do something about this. This is not working, what we're doing. So she said, Callum had been tutoring since 1st grade. Grace was actually starting to do tutoring, and we were doing all of this grinding to try and get better, and it just wasn't working. So she said, I'm a single mom, and what was really fun for her in the program is that as they went to each new module, each new challenge was exciting. And so they found out that, even though you're told that you're not at grade level and you're working really hard, it's a big hit. And the program might be a little bit scary, but next year was middle school for her son. And she said, like, oh my gosh, he's already going to be going in behind. Grace is going to be in 3rd grade. Even the math problems have reading. I'm just at my wit's end. We've tried all these things. I paid all this money. We're just not sure what to do. And she found hope in our program. So just some other feelings that I'm sure that you can resonate. She said it's really hard to stay positive sometimes when you're constantly getting the feedback that your child is behind. But she found that because we pair supporting your child neurologically with dyslexia with mindset support, she said, oh my gosh, I think the mindset that you offered was huge. Everything's hard until you work through it. They put in the work and it's now showing big time, and they both learned some significant life lessons that if you put work into something, that it's going to get better. So let's dive into their data more specifically so you can kind of see what happened for her kids. So this is Grace's data snapshot. She, again, is 8 years old. And so her phonological awareness when she started the program was at 54% accurate. So what that means is we were giving her an assessment where we had asked her to hear all of the sounds in the language. Take one of these out, put this other sound in, see if you can put it back together. And all of that happens auditorily. It's the brain's ability to hear and manipulate sounds. So she was about 50-50, really, really struggling to hear and respond to those sounds. By the time she finished the program, just 6 months later, she was 88% accurate. She only had 3 errors in that whole assessment. Her reading, we use the Wide Range Achievement Test 5. So that is a norm referenced assessment. It's nationally normed. It's got percentiles per age. So when she started, she was reading better than 5 out of 100 of her same age peers. And when she ended, 6 months later, she was reading better than 82 out of 100 of her same age peers. And the same thing in spelling. We always measure before and after the program to really determine the effectiveness of the methodology itself. So we use the same Wide Range Achievement Test 5 for spelling. She started at the 14th percentile, meaning that she was spelling better than 14 out of 100 of her same age peers. And she ended at the 42nd percentile, spelling better than 42 out of 100 of her same age peers. But she had several what are called good phonetic equivalents. Many of her attempts were just one letter off, or she mixed up a pattern, and had she had those pieces right, she would have been at the 88th percentile. So significant progress for Grace within that amount of time. I will say that for most of our clients, they're able to do the program within 4 months, but because Tara was working with 2 children and she was a single mom, there were some times where she was splitting custody and she didn't always have the kids to do the exercises. So that did have a slight increase in how long it took them to get through the program. But in the grand scheme of things, 6 months is a blip in time, especially when you compare it to the many hundreds of clients that have told us that, gosh, we've been through years and years and years of tutoring or school support, and we just are not moving anywhere. So to see this kind of growth within 6 months is really quite incredible. So, just learning a little bit more about Grace, when she did those beginning assessments, Mom said that she read the first 2 words and then she just cried. So I think it's just true that when kids are struggling to that degree, they're saying things like, I'm dumb, I'm stupid, I don't like this, I hate reading, all of those things that we really don't want our children to feel. And at the end, in the final assessment, she read for 5 solid minutes. And so it was just such a significant difference in how that manifested. They were able to stop tutoring. So halfway through the program, they just said, we don't need to do this anymore. And so they completely discontinued the tutoring that they were doing outside of the program. Her confidence has grown tremendously, Mom said. She's more confident around her peer group. She doesn't say I'm dumb anymore. She's feeling much more confident, which as a parent, like that's the best thing in the world, to see your child kind of step into their own. So again, when we're looking at the actual numbers, 23 out of 42 were correct the first time around. So again, like about that 50-50, and she had just missed a couple on that exit assessment. So here's what I think is important for you to know as it pertains to educational statistics. This is maybe not the prettiest slide, but I want to talk you through what this actually means and why these results are so incredible. So if you take a look at this red line right in the middle, that's the 50th percentile, or that would be average performance for any given age. So for age 8, like Grace was, the average child would be performing where the red line is. And so when you're looking at doing any kind of an intervention, you always want to know, how effective is this intervention going to be? Is this going to work for me? What's the likelihood that I'm going to get these results if I do that? So in any given school year, it's typical for kids to go from the red line to the blue line. So that's what we call a 0.3 of a standard deviation. All kids typically grow as they go through a school year. That's about the amount that is normal for growth. And then you can see this green line that's right in the middle. This is what we call moderate statistical growth. And then if you look at this orange line up at the top, that's a 0.8 of a standard deviation, or that's statistically significant growth. And the reason that I'm telling you about this and talking about statistics is that it's important for you to understand just how big of growth that this really is. So when Grace started the program, she was at the 5th percentile. So she was performing right here on this growth curve. And if she would have made typical growth within the school year, she would have moved to the yellow line. If she made statistically significant growth, which most studies don't achieve that, she would have made it to this kind of orange color. But Grace made it to the green. So what we're super, super proud of in our program is we doubled the amount of statistically significant growth that Grace had within a 6-month period. So she just turned 9. She was 8 at the time that she went through the program, but she had absolutely incredible results that rival the greatest studies done in education. So I'll share that with you in a couple of slides. Same thing was true for spelling. This is where she started at the 14th percentile. Typical growth would have been to that yellow. Statistically significant growth was to that like tan color. And she was right at that statistically significant growth. Again, she had many, many items that were just one letter off that would have catapulted her to the 88th percentile. So it's just super fun to see. And one of the analogies that we often talk about is the difference between a river that's running and still water. So most of the clients that come to us have been standing in still water for a long time. You know, like they're trying to paddle around and get things to get moving again, but it just feels icky. It feels like you're stuck. It feels like you're in a slog. It starts to get stinky. I mean, like there's lots of things about human beings that don't go well with not moving at all. And so what's really beautiful about Grace's data is that we got her firmly into that river and she's moving along very, very nicely as a result of doing the exercises in the program. And so at the same time that Grace was doing the program, so too was her 10-year-old brother, Callum. So if we take a look at his snapshot, he started with a little higher phonological awareness. As you can recall from Tara's story, she said he'd been in tutoring since the 1st grade. So he'd had a little bit more accuracy with that, but by the time he got done, I think he only had 1 or 2 errors at the 90 or at 95% accuracy for his phonological awareness. As per the wide range achievement test 5 in reading, he started at the 14th percentile, meaning he was reading better than 14 out of 100 of his same age peers. 6 months later, he was reading better than 77 out of 100 of his same age peers. Same thing was true for spelling. Started at the 16th percentile, spelling better than 16 out of 100, ending at the 34th, spelling better than 34 out of 100. But his data was very similar to Grace. He had a ton of good phonetic equivalents where he was just 1 letter off, you know, forgetting a silent E or not realizing that it was an E and an A, which would have put him at the 79th percentile for spelling. So again, massive growth in all 3 areas for Callum as well. So a little bit more about his story. Callum has been in tutoring since first grade, and mom said, yeah, he was making some improvements over those 3 years, and he was getting some decoding going, but it just wasn't moving to the rate that she wanted. And she started panicking because he's about to be in middle school in the fall, and she didn't want him to start middle school at a deficit. So she said that, some of his celebrations is that he's reading at church sometimes now. His confidence has grown tremendously. She said to listen to him reading out loud, it's just crazy how much better he's gotten. He used to read like a robot, and that's improved so much. Um, he and his mother are more confident. They're less worried about skipping words, and he's doing that very openly, in front of peers. So that's just super exciting for us to see that, we're building kids' confidence. We're helping them to realize that they are superpower brains and they have so much growth and capacity that they're able to tap into. So a deeper look at his data and his growth. Yeah, so he went from having 12 errors on that assessment to only 2. Same kind of thing with that normal distribution curve. This is where Callum started at the 14th percentile. Typical growth within a year would have been this orange. Statistically significant growth would have been this tan, and Callum went above and beyond statistically significant growth to almost double that at the 77th percentile. So again, like here's another case where you just do the system. You show up every day, you do the exercises that we're telling you to do, and you create a loving environment, and you can have massive, massive growth for your child in these areas. So again, here was spelling where he started, typical growth, statistically significant growth, and where Callum was on his test. However, with those few items that he just could have had like 1 or 2 more with, the silent E placed correctly or those types of things, he would have been at the 77th percentile for that too. So amazing, amazing. So just ways to celebrate our client Tara and kind of highlight her case in particular. She took not 1, but 2 children through the program and obtained statistically significant results for both of them. She does not have a background in reading. She works in medicine, but she is not a reading scholar. She said she really loved the neuroplasticity aspects of our program. She said the videos were super helpful, exercises were super doable, and she has busy little people. So both of the kids are involved in sports. She said they like to be outside all the time, but they took the exercises with them. So it's very, very portable. It's not anything that you need to be attached to a computer and doing. So she said she remembers being at cheerleading, watching Grace do cheerleading while she was up in the bleachers with Callum doing the exercises and vice versa. And so, they were able to make that work even with a busy family. For them, they were able to do 4 to 5 times a week because of split custody. So, in an ideal setting, we would have 7 days a week because that would be better for the brain. But sometimes those things can't always happen because of outside factors. And she still obtained statistically significant, amazing results for both of her children. And so I asked her, do you have any advice for other people that might be in your position where you were when you started, where you're just kind of feeling overwhelmed and you're trying to figure out what to do? She said, oh my gosh, go for it, try it, especially with how the program works. It's pretty amazing to watch their little brains. Be consistent, be coachable, be resourceful. She said, you've totally helped my kids turn the corner and change their lives. So thank you. So just huge, huge wins for them. But something that I want to just reiterate in this message of it doesn't have to stay like this forever. It is absolutely possible to help a child reorganize the way that their brain is hearing and responding to language, but it does take consistency and the right practice with the right things in order to change that. So if we look at all of the thousands of children that we have supported with this methodology, we're just super, super proud to say that this is typical for our graduates. Like, yep, here's what typical growth looks like. Here's that statistically significant growth, and our average client grows far beyond that every single time. And so that's just super, super fun to see and something that we're really proud of. So if you want to geek out on educational statistics, I've got some resources here that you can take a look at. If you're wondering, like, well, how do they decide what typical growth is? John Hattie, who has done meta-analyses, so studies of studies, has done tons and tons of work on education and educational studies and statistics. And his work has really kind of highlighted what is considered accelerated student learning, but you can kind of dig into some of these sources within visible learning to see what he's talking about with effect sizes greater than 0.4. Obviously, our clients are like 2.4. But even up here, when you look at the highest effect sizes in educational studies are like a 1.5. And again, our clients are going almost twice that nearly every time. So don't buy the story that you can't do anything about dyslexia, because it just simply isn't true. So again, to go back to that analogy of getting in the moving river, we really, really want for you to be able to close the gap, because the longer that you and your child sit in this place where you're spinning and you're not making any progress, other kids are growing. And they are going to continue to grow, and your child is going to sit in the sitting and spinning place, and that just doesn't feel good for you. It doesn't feel good for them. It just creates a whole bunch of anxiety and sadness and a lot of despair that's just really hard. So I would say that, it's critical to close the gap as quickly as you can. As soon as you find out that this is the diagnosis that you have, I would continue to move forward with trying to figure out how to get started with support as soon as possible, because it just leads to missed opportunities, current and ongoing struggles. It means that you might miss out on future opportunities, and it really does impact the whole family. So in having these conversations with thousands of families, they will almost always say, yeah, everybody in the house is suffering because my child is suffering. So when your kiddo comes home and they've got 3 to 4 hours worth of homework in the night, you'd better believe that that has an impact on mom or on dad or on other siblings or on the child's mood, which then impacts the whole house. So it absolutely causes others within that sphere to be struggling and suffering too. So moving forward, accelerating a lot, closing the gap is just so, so critical, so that you can move beyond those things, that you can start believing in your potential. And when you believe in your potential, you're more likely to take actions that are going to be positive. Like, if you believe that you're capable, you might take courses in middle and high school that you wouldn't have taken otherwise. You might go for careers that are really in line with your spirit and your heart that you might not have gone for if you didn't believe in yourself. And so it's just got this potential to move you and your child in the right direction, in the direction of their dreams. And that's what this is really all about, is it's giving these brilliant children opportunities to be successful and to live their best life. So I think, something that's important to know is that there's a couple of ways that you can move forward next, depending on how much information you already have about your child's struggles. So for many of you out there, you are suspecting that this could be dyslexia, but you're not really sure yet. if that's you, go ahead and send us a message, drop a note in the comments to just say Dyslexia Discovery Day, and we're happy to get you into our screening system that will help you to know for sure if this is something that your child is dealing with. So what can be true is that those centers that do the testing often are backlogged. They have wait lists of 6 months to a year. They can be incredibly expensive, and you just need answers to know if this is really what you're dealing with. And so if that's you, we can absolutely help you find that information, know for sure if that's really what you've got going on. So drop us a message, say Dyslexia Discovery Day, and we will absolutely get you those resources to figure those pieces out. And if you are inspired by this and you're saying, gosh, we just finished with parent teacher conferences and it really didn't go well. And we've waited from September until now to see this kind of growth and it's just not happening. Know that you are not alone. You are not unlike Tara or any of the other clients that we've had go through the program. It's just that you haven't made the decision yet to say, yeah, we're ready to take action and we're going to do something serious about this. So if that's you, let us know, drop us a note to say, I'm ready, and we will absolutely get you onto a call with our team. It's complimentary, this call, and you will have the opportunity to see if the program is the right fit for you and your family. So we're super excited to share all of these stories and cases with you because, as you know, the more that you can be inspired to know that it doesn't have to stay like this, the more it's easy for you to take action and not stay in this place of stuck. So thank you for tuning in today. I want to just give another huge congratulations to Mama Tara for the incredible work that she did at home, maybe even in her pajamas, with the Retrain the Dyslexic Brain program. And we look forward to seeing you again in 2 weeks when we celebrate another one of our amazing graduates. Thanks, everyone.